Welcome to The Unfinished Woman, the space where clarity is not rushed, healing is not performative, and becoming is not a race. This is for the woman who looks like she has it all together, but knows there are still parts of her that are in process. The woman who is functioning but quietly asking deeper questions. The woman who is strong but ready to be honest about what strength has cost her. Here, we don't rush transformation, we don't skip steps, and we don't shame the version of you that survived because unfinished does not mean broken, it means becoming. This is where we talk about identity, transition, clarity, capacity, and the emotional architecture required to build a life that actually fits who you are becoming, not just what you've been carrying. Because there are seasons where God is not just changing your circumstances, He's reconstructing your identity. And that work takes intention. So if you've been feeling stretched, if you've been outgrowing things you once prayed for, if you've been navigating a version of yourself you don't fully recognize yet, you're not behind, you're in transition. And here, we don't just talk about change, we learn how to design it. So take a breath, get present, and let's begin. We are so glad you are joining us today.
Welcome to the Unfinished Woman podcast. I'm Dr. T. Carter, the transition architect. And today I want to start here. Some of us aren't stuck, we're loyal. And that distinction matters more than you think. Because when you believe you're stuck, you look for strategy. But when you realize you're loyal, you have to confront truth. We've been in a series talking about grieving what still lives. Not grief tied to death, but grief tied to awareness. The kind of grief that shows up when you can see clearly now, when you have to be honest that you've outgrown something, but it hasn't fully left your life. In the previous episodes, we've named it, we framed it, we've talked about how to perform through it. But today, I want to go deeper because sometimes the reason we haven't released it is not confusion, it's loyalty. And the truth is, loyalty can feel like love. It can feel like integrity. It can even feel like purpose. But what happens when what you're loyal to is no longer aligned with who you're becoming? Because not everything you're holding on to is active. Sometimes it's allegiance. And allegiance is powerful because it's emotional, it's not logical. We're holding on to it because it makes sense. We're holding on to it because it once meant something, because it carried us, because it was there when we needed it most. Here's some things that we may be loyal to: a version of us that survived something hard, a season where we had to be everything for everyone, a timeline we promised ourselves would happen by now, an identity that we learned to depend on, and lastly, a role that made us feel valuable. But here's the truth that we don't acknowledge and say out loud: we don't hold it because it fits. Mm-mm. We hold it because it once saved us. And there's a part of us that may feel like, if I let this go, am I being ungrateful? If I choose to release this, am I losing myself? And if I change, will people still recognize me? And more importantly, will I still recognize myself? That's not confusion, that's loyalty. In Genesis 19, there's a moment that feels small, but I believe is actually profound. In this story, Lot and his family are being led out of destruction, and they're giving one. They're being led out of destruction, and they're given one clear instruction, and that instruction is do not look back. Simple, direct, clear. And yet we know that Lot's wife looks back. And for years, I've heard this story preached and framed as disobedience. But today, I'll ask you to consider a different perspective. What if it wasn't just disobedience? What if it was attachment? What if it was loyalty? Because the truth is, we don't look back at something we've disconnected from. We look back at something that still has our heart. And for some of us, it's not that we're disobeying God, it's that we're still emotionally tied to what God has already called us out of. We can outgrow something and still feel loyal to it. We can evolve beyond a role and still feel responsible for maintaining it. We can heal from a season and still feel obligated to the identity that we built inside of it. And I believe that this is especially true for high capacity women because we built our lives around being reliable, strong, and adaptable. We're the ones who make it work. We don't drop things, we carry them, even when they're heavy, even when they are outdated, and yes, even when they're no longer ours to carry. And I believe this is where it gets real because we have to ask ourselves what happens when the identity that once protected me becomes the very thing that's restricting me? What happens when my strength becomes overextension? When my reliability becomes pressure? When my ability to adapt becomes self abandonment? What happens when my strength becomes my cage? Because the truth is that it will if I never give myself permission to evolve. Loyalty to outdated identities can feel like integrity, but real integrity requires alignment, and alignment requires truth. And that truth may be that version of me was necessary, but it is not sustainable. That version of me was powerful, but she is not who I'm becoming. That version of me carried me through survival, but I am no longer in survival mode. And here's the truth: you can honor who you were without staying who you were. I'll say it again because I don't want you to miss it. You can honor who you were without staying who you were. I want to encourage you that releasing loyalty is not betrayal, it's alignment. You're not dishonoring your past, you're integrating it. You're not rejecting who you were, you're updating who you are. And yes, this is where grief shows up because letting go of loyalty can feel like losing a part of yourself. But you're not losing yourself, you're releasing what no longer reflects you. And your future requires room. We have to make room for new capacity. We have to make room for new identity. And yet, we have to make room for new assignments because we cannot carry everything forward. So I should have slowed down here, not to rush through it, overthink it, but just take a moment and be honest and ask yourself, what am I still loyal to that no longer alive? It could be a role, a relationship dynamic, a version of yourself, or a belief about what makes you valuable. And then there's a deeper question: If I wasn't afraid of being misunderstood, what would I release? Because let's be honest, sometimes the reason we hold on is because we don't want to explain the change. Make sure to take a moment and just sit with that. Because the truth is, you're allowed to evolve, you're allowed to outgrow, and you are allowed to become unfamiliar to people who only knew the version of you that survived. That does not make you inconsistent. That makes you honest. And honesty is the foundation of alignment. So before I go, I want to leave you with this. You are not behind, you are not broken, and you are definitely not disloyal for evolving. You are becoming, and becoming will require you to release what once carried you. The unfinished reflection for this series is, where am I mistaking loyalty for alignment? If this episode spoke with you, I ask you to share it and send it to someone who's been carrying something they've outgrown. And if you're ready to do this work in real time, I'll encourage you to follow this space, because we're just not talking about change. We're learning how to walk through it. I'll meet you in the next conversation. Bye.
Before you go, take a breath. Remember, you are not behind. You are not late. And nothing about you is broken. You are unfinished on purpose, and God is still shaping you. If today's conversation resonated, stay connected. Follow the podcast. Share this episode with another woman who's becoming, and come back for more conversations rooted in clarity, identity, and transition. Every step forward doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be aligned. Honor your season, trust your becoming, and I'll see you next time on the Unfinished Woman podcast.